Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how to make this fun mixed media painting of a Dreamcatcher. The first thing I'm doing is using a compass and pencil. I am drawing a large circle where I want the main part of the Dreamcatcher body to be. Now I'm going to draw the webbing in the Dreamcatcher, and I thought it would be kind of a fun pattern to start from that center point where the pokey part of my compass was and to draw some curvy lines out to the edge so I kind of make a whirligig sort of shape there. Now starting at the edge, at one of the points where one of my little whirligig shapes meets the edge of my circle, I'm going to draw a spiral, and that's going to crisscross all those lines and make kind of a web. Now you can make your lines going every which way. You can have a completely wonky, whimsical looking web there. However you do it is going to be just fine. By the time we do all the painting and inking and embellishing, it's going to look fantastic no matter how you do it. I just decided to go in and add a few more little lines going the other way just to give it a little bit more segmentation in the little shapes, but that's about it, and you can do it however you want. If you don't like curvy lines, then you can go ahead and make sharp straight lines. It's completely up to you. Then just go ahead and add beads any place you want. I'm putting beads at the edge of the Dreamcatcher, any place the threads kind of touch the edge, but then you can also go in the middle of the Dreamcatcher and put on beads anytime you have intersecting threads. It'll look great. Don't overthink it. Just kind of try to space them out fairly balanced. Now we're going to put in the background wash. So you need to spray your paper to get it wet, or you can wet it with a brush, whatever you prefer. And you're going to put the colors that you want in the background. Now these colors are going to integrate and make your entire piece have a cohesive, harmonized feel. So you want to put colors here that are going to be used later on in the painting. So I'm going to use some nice warm yellow, some yellow ochre, some teal, any color that I think I'm going to want to put in later, I want to put in this background wash. I can also flick on colors to give it a little bit of texture, and then you just need to let that dry before proceeding to the next step. To make the feathers on our Dreamcatcher, we're going to use rubber stamps, and I tested this one on a scrap of paper just to make sure it was going to stamp well. These stamps are high quality and wonderful for this technique, and they come from our sponsor, Lost Coast Designs. I'll put a link in the video description as well as a coupon code, thefrugalcrafter, which will save you 15% on your order. And if your order after discount totals $100 or more, you get free shipping within the United States or half price shipping if you're ordering somewhere else in the world. They do ship everywhere, which I think is totally awesome. So to stamp with these stamps, what you want to do is use a flat synthetic brush. And the reason I say synthetic is because the bristles are a little bit stiffer and don't hold a ton of water. And then you're just going to paint your watercolor paint onto your rubber stamp. And you notice I'm just using them glue sticked onto a block. This is stamping really well even without any cushion because these are really nice high quality stamps. And then you press straight down and you get a beautiful impression. These set of leaves, there's 4 different ones. They have beautiful detail and they're great if you stamp them with the ink, but you can stamp them with watercolor too. I find that the watercolors that are they come from Asian countries, like these Gansi Tambis, are a little bit more opaque and thicker once you add a little bit of water to them, and they work really well for this technique. And they're actually less expensive. So it's kind of funny, the cheaper watercolors will work better for this than your more expensive watercolors, so keep that in mind. I'm going to stamp each 4 of these feathers onto the background, kind of spacing them around so that they kind of look like the Dreamcatcher is kind of getting caught in the breeze and the feathers are kind of blowing across the paper. So I just want to space them out well, and I want to use a variety of colors from magenta to purple to blue to green and yellow. I want to get a bunch of colors integrated here so that no matter what color I want to add to my painting down the road, everything's going to match and go together. Now let's take a closer look at the feathers. You can see how beautifully they stamped, even though they're not going to stamp as perfectly as if we used ink because the paint wants to kind of drip and slop around. It gives us a wonderful pattern and texture that we otherwise wouldn't have had if we just kind of painted it in. We'd have to go back in and add those details. So it really makes very little work out of this whole process. So now basically all I have to do is use the colors I've already used to trace the pencil lines that I made on the windcatcher, and I also want to make some colorful ribbons to attach the feathers to the windcatcher. I just try to make sure that the feathers are kind of painted at an intersection of one of the ribbons, the bead, and the edge, and that way it looks like it has a natural point that it's coming from on the Dreamcatcher. After you've inked in all of the strings that you drew, go ahead and dab in the beads. And remember, you can place them wherever you want. I would start by putting them on the ones you drew, and then if you feel like you need a few more, then go ahead and dab them in. You can also paint some beads on the ribbons that are attached to the feathers. Now we need to fill in some more of the Dreamcatcher, and I thought, I'd really like a few more feathers, but I didn't want to have whole ones because I thought that would be a little too much. So what I'm doing here is painting a few more ribbons and then freehanding in the ends of a few feathers just to fill in the composition. And then you can put a bunch of other streamers kind of floating in the breeze to help round everything out and make it feel nice and full and fun. Now let's move over to the Dreamcatcher net. I thought it looked a little plain, so what I'm doing here is just filling in some of the shapes that were made by the thread with my colored watercolor. And I found that the more pastel colors are more opaque, so I decided to use some teal and some yellow. Anything that looks lighter in the palette is going to work better for this because it's going to block out stuff that's underneath. I thought that I had too many threads in some portions, so I thought if I go ahead and color in some sections, it's going to make it look less fussy and a little more fun and whimsical. You want to go ahead and do that with the colors that you wish to use until you feel like it's full enough and has enough color. Feel free to use any of the colors that you used on the woven part of the Dreamcatcher to add streamers to the Dreamcatcher. That way you harmonize the painting and you give it a nice fullness. I love the way it looks like the breeze is just blowing that and sending all of those ribbons and streamers into the air. So go ahead and remember, if you do it to one section of the painting, use that color somewhere else. It's a great tip no matter what you're doing for crafting or painting. Once those details are dry, go ahead with a black marker and outline some of your details. I like to go around and outline the portions of color that I put in there and also outline some of the ribbons. Basically, I want to give a little punch of contrast here and there throughout my picture. And now I'm doing the same thing with a white gel pen to add little highlights. Think of it as adding the little sparkles on those beads that you drew in there and just kind of giving it a little glint here and there on the threads in the Dreamcatcher. Any place you want a sparkle, put that white pen and it really makes your design pop. Now that I have the black marker and the white pen in there, I've got my darkest value and my brightest value. So I can go in with my watercolors once again and touch up my midtones. So basically I just went in with darker colors of my watercolor, added details in the feather, added some more ribbons, and basically spruced the piece up a little bit. Now at this point I noticed my painting was a little bit wrinkly because I never taped it down to begin with, so I'm simply ironing the back of it with a hot dry iron. I just have my painting sitting on top of a silicone mat on top of a stack of paper so that it doesn't damage my work surface. Just give it a couple swipes with an iron and it should be good as new. I think the best thing about mixed media art is the layers that you can achieve by using different medias on top of each other. Now I'm using some colored pencil to build depth in the Dreamcatcher. I'm going in the woven area and I'm going around any segment with color with a dark shade of colored pencil, and then I'm going in the center of that section of color with a lighter colored pencil in that same color. So I'm using 2 shades of pink for the pink ones, I'll use 2 shades of yellow for the yellow ones, 2 shades of teal for the teal ones, and so on and so forth until I've colored as many of the portions that I want to. You can even add new colors at this stage of the game, which is kind of fun. If you forgot to add some colors into the Dreamcatcher body, you can go ahead and do that right now. Or if you decided you wanted to add a few more, or if you decided you just wanted to color the whole darn thing in, you can totally do that. Colored pencil is semi-opaque, so it'll cover on top of watercolor really, really well. In fact, colored pencil on top of watercolor is one of my favorite techniques, and it's a great way to rescue a painting that's not working out very well. Now I'm going back in with that white gel pen and adding some highlights and sparkles on the beads and other little places on the ribbons. I'm just doing some little scribbly circles and making kind of like little pearls here and there. And that's just going to look like a little bit of a sparkle or glisten on the ribbons. It's just a decorative touch that you can choose to add or not. It's completely up to you. I happen to really like it though. Another fun product you can use is a Wink of Stella glitter pen. These have super fine like mica sparkly glitter, and I'm just going in and coloring over some of the yellow sections on the Dreamcatcher body and also throwing in a few ribbons of that same color. It doesn't add a lot of color, but it does add a nice shimmer and shine whenever you tip the piece or look at it from another angle. I went back to the colored pencil and decided to add some more details on the feathers by adding the darker color on the outsides of the feathers and then going in with some lighter yellows on the inside of the feathers. It just brought out a roundness and a lightness to the feather that before it didn't have. It was a little flat before, so this just helped to flesh it out a little bit. At this point of the painting, something just felt like it was missing, and I realized I wish I had more texture in the background. So I'm using this large grunge border from Lost Coast Designs to add some texture. I'm using my flat brush again to load it up with watercolor paint. I'm using colors that I've already used in the composition, so it shouldn't look weird when I go to stamp it on top. And the nice thing about using watercolors is that we've put colored pencil down. We've put all kinds of things down on our painting. So these watercolors are going to almost sink into the background. So hopefully this won't give anybody heart palpitations when they see me just stamp on top of this painting that we've worked an hour on. I'm using yellow, green, teal, basically any color I've used in the background, but I'm limiting it to the softer colors just so that I don't end up getting too much paint down. Once you have completely covered your stamp, you can go ahead and flip it over onto your painting. Now feel free to stamp this in a couple different places because what you do to one section of your painting, you really want to do somewhere else, or otherwise it's going to look kind of weird. And I think the first time you stamp that down and you see that big splop of pattern in one section, you may think you've made a horrible mistake, but trust me, just kind of pick up the stamp, roll it in your hand, tap it here, tap it there, until you feel like you've created enough harmony that it actually adds to and accentuates the piece instead of detracting from it, which is what we want at this stage. I love the bits of serendipity that happen when you're creating mixed media art. Like, for instance, the highlights and circles I put on the beads ended up looking like bubbles to me, and I thought, wouldn't that be fun? Just have a bunch of bubbles floating in the breeze with our Dreamcatcher. I thought it was whimsical and really went well with the theme of the piece. So I'm just scribbling in with my white gel pen some bubbles here and there. And notice how I'm having the bubbles kind of drift from the lower left-hand corner up to the upper right hand corner. It really gives you that feeling that a breeze is blowing and sending those feathers, ribbons, and bubbles to the right hand side. I think anything you can do to reinforce the direction and the elements that you've put into a painting really helps, and mixed media is just wonderful because you have everything in your art studio at your disposal. Honestly, this pretty much finishes up the piece. I'm just putting on a few extra highlights and details, but that pretty much does it. If you enjoyed this project, I hope you check out our sponsor, lostcoastdesigns.com. They have a beautiful catalog of rubber stamps that are not what you're going to find anywhere else. They're whimsical, they're quirky, they're fun, and they're funny, so I think you'll really enjoy their products. Make sure you use the coupon code thefrugalcrafter for 15% off your order, and if your order totals over $100 after any discounts, you get free shipping within the United States or half-price shipping everywhere else in the world. And yes, they do ship worldwide. I want to thank you so much for going on this mixed media adventure with me today, and I hope you try something like it yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.